everyone. Welcome back to Product for Product. It's Matt and Moshe here. Thanks for tuning in this week. We are excited to have Phyllis Njoroge on the show to talk about her minimalist approach to using product management tools. Welcome to the show, Phyllis. Let's take a sec to introduce yourself before we dive in.
Thank you so much both for having me on here. Yes, I'm Phyllis. I'm currently a product manager at Redfin. I'm in my first year of product management work, and I also make LinkedIn content related to product management. And I'm writing a book on managing imposter syndrome as well.
Hi, Phyllis. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So can you just repeat again the name of the company? I didn't catch that.
Yes, I'm a product manager at Redfin.
Redfin, that's right. So what you guys are doing over there? Maybe just give us a bit background about that.
Yeah, so Redfin is a software real estate company that has the mission of redefining real estate in the consumer's favor. So our entire offerings span everything from buying a home, selling a home, mortgage, title, deed, up to, and now we're also incorporating rentals as well. So it's supposed to be everything about the home ownership and buying process.
I knew the name because I've seen the commercials. Okay.
Oh, okay. Are they also in Canada? Because I don't remember seeing them here. So
yes, they are also in Canada.
Oh, okay, great. And you're from the Bay Area in San Francisco, I believe, right?
Yeah, I work out of Redfin San Francisco office, though remotely.
I see. These days, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we chatted a bit before on LinkedIn, when we met, etc., and you mentioned to me that you're not using a lot of tools, and that's where this minimalist product manager came to my mind. Because I don't think there is anything wrong about that. It's just, each one of us is doing their jobs a bit differently. But I was really intrigued to hear about how do you do your job with not so many tools, or what? First of all, maybe let's talk about what are the tools that you're using.
Yeah, I would say I don't use a lot of, PM products that are out there because Redfin has so many internal products. So beyond using Google Suite for things like documents and meetings, I would say that a lot of our stuff, for example, our experimentation platform is in-house. So it's built and maintained by developers that we have. It's not an experimentation platform from elsewhere. And because of that, a lot of my work revolves around experimentation and documents. So it's between Google Suite and internal tools for the most part. Though, for experimentation and analysis, I do use Tableau. So it's not like my work's completely devoid of outside tools, but it's used pretty heavily on not being divided across several external platforms.
I see.
Okay. Do you use the Google Analytics product?
I don't use Google Analytics. I know our marketing team does, but I don't use it personally for my own work.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we talked about, I think it was Pendo with Andrew Miller, he was also referring to an in-house built data analytics system that they're using. So they had like a combination of that and Pendo that they're using at the company where he was. I think also in the real estate area. So do you know like the history behind it? Why, for example, Redfin decided to build it in-house versus getting, a software or a product that is already out there?
That's actually a really good question, and a question that you've now inspired me to ask other people who work at Redfin. I definitely can't speak for the company on any of this, but I'd imagine that using all these external products adds up over time. And maybe when you use any given external platform, there's limitations to what it has and what it can provide. So rather than like signing up for a bunch of different things and paying all the licensing, then not really getting something that fits exactly what you're looking for, you kind of build exactly what you're looking for. At least that's what my hypothesis would be behind the logic there, but I haven't actually asked other people this question, so I don't know what the official answer is around why we build our tools in-house as compared to pulling from elsewhere. Although I think we're starting to do that more often. For example, we just started using Full Story. So I know that maybe over time, it might change how much we're using internally versus licensing from other companies. But currently I haven't started using Full Story, so I can't speak to what that experience is like.
I see. Yeah, and I believe Full Story is a product that allows you to understand how people are using the product, but more like a Hotjar, where they can actually see the specifics, the specific places where people would interact with the page. But we didn't do yet a series about this, but I think this is in the plans for the future. But I think with the Full Story, what I've seen is that they can actually combine all the data together based on different segmentation and personas. So it's not just one person at a time, but more of a group of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it sounds really cool. And I'm very interested to see how people start using it, and also at some point get into using it myself, because it seems really interesting to be able to have some level of access to what people are doing in better detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So going back to the platform that you have in-house that Redfin developed, and I'm sure they also have to maintain it and continue in supporting it, which is also one of those reasons why sometimes you would want to go with external system. But on the other hand, it give you what you need. You were saying it's related to experimentation. So can you describe that a bit to us? I'm sure you cannot tell a lot because it's, I'm sure, proprietary for the company. But if there is a way our listeners can understand a bit more, just what areas of experimentation you're referring to. Does it do data analytics on the different experiments so you can actually get results? Can you set up different experiments and compare them, etc.?
Yeah, so my understanding of how it works is, let's say you, for example, want to do a button change. We're going to change the button from red to blue in this example. So you have the developers change the button from red to blue. Say it's a 50-50 A/B experiment. So you're splitting 50% of people into the control experience of, I forgot which color I said is the original one, but I'll go with blue. So you're putting 50% of people in the normal experience of the blue button, and then you're putting 50% of people into the red and seeing how different metrics move as a result, if they move at all. And so this experimentation platform, once you launch that, will be able to split the people into their different cohorts and then track the data on those different cohorts, and then also give you some outcome table on how the data varies by each cohort. So let's say it's touring. So it's a tour button to tour home. It was blue before, now you've made it red, and you want to see how many more people click the button, how many more people end up going on tour, things like that. So you can get that kind of data from this platform that's tracking people and splitting them into different cohorts. And then let's say you analyze the experiment and you decide that the red tour button is more effective than the blue tour button. Then you can also use the platform to then configure the cohorts of people so that 100% of users are all now in the red button experience.
Right. So that goes to experimentation, and I'm sure there is. This is just one small example, but I'm sure there is many other ways, more complicated than that you can experiment with different assumptions or different hypotheses. So you can get information, and then you have those results and the data, and you can actually find what you actually need to learn, right?
Yes. I have a hard time with the wording of like, you can actually find out what you need to learn, because part of the job of a product manager is figuring out what do you need to learn, right? The platform is only as good as giving you numbers, and then you kind of have to figure out what to do from there. So
yes, we talked about it in the past, data versus insights.
Yeah, exactly. So you can get a bunch of numbers and that's it. That's as far as the platform goes. After that, that's where you have to step in and figure out, what do you need to learn from these numbers, and what does this mean, and what do you do from here?
I see. So going back to that theme of minimalist product manager, I guess it's not completely true because you still have that in-house product, but there is probably some place for improvements on that, especially on this type of insights. But we also saw that with external products, that some of them are lacking that as well. So don't feel you're alone there.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah. So what about other things like, for example, road mapping? We just did recently a series about tools for feedback and roadmaps. getting feedback from users about ideas they want and pushing this into a type of a roadmap system. How do you do that?
Yeah, so in terms of the roadmaps themselves, we do our documentation on Google Docs, and that's how we use the document as a way to get feedback and iterate on the roadmap. So a lot of the conversations happen in there. In terms of like getting customer feedback on the roadmap itself, I would say I'm not aware of us getting customer feedback on roadmaps. That's, if anything, that sounds a little convoluted to me, because even just like getting feedback from people on other teams who don't have all the context related to things on the roadmap can be a little hard. So I'm having a hard time imagining opening that up to a customer and asking them for feedback when they have even less context on everything that's going on. And kind of related to the user research. At that point, it's like user research goes into deciding what's on the roadmap, and we'll do maybe user testing on different prototypes and stuff after we've decided to go with a certain feature change and make sure that it works before we start experimenting with it. So there's other products that come into play based off of what we're building. But when I think of road mapping, I just think of a Google document.
Mm-hmm.
And you're referring to a Word type of document or spreadsheet?
Yeah, just literally like a Google Doc. So just a
Google Doc.
White document for text.
Yeah, I see. That's interesting. Sometimes just using the basics tools that we have is good enough, and we don't need to invest a lot if we have the right process to share it, etc.
Yeah, you may not be a minimalist in the tools because you are using tools, but it's a minimalist approach to the product management philosophy. You're not just using tools for the sake of using tools. You're being thoughtful about what you're doing and what you're using for the company. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm actually, now that y'all are asking me these questions, I've become incredibly curious as to what everyone else is using. It sounds a little complex, because the thing with working at the companies that you work at is like you don't necessarily have a bunch of insight as to how other places are working.
Yeah, you are using tools that they use typically. So
it's a good question, and I, as a product manager and doing my job in product management in the past 10 years, I've been many times introducing products in the company because I saw the lack for something that I needed. And I was like, if I want to solve that, either I have to build something on my own, which I don't have the capacity to, or I have to find a product that will fit that and try to see if we can get that. And sometimes I was successful, sometimes I wasn't. These days, there is also product operations type of groups in many organizations that are really helping centralizing this and helping the product managers focus on, finding the value to the users and to the organization rather than trying to find products that they need to use. But I don't think most of us have that privilege to have product operations in our companies. So yeah, we're still kind of struggling with that, and we're hoping that also with this podcast, it's helpful for people to understand or to just learn what is out there.
Yeah, I'm definitely learning. I really took for granted how simple it was to just be conducting your entire roadmap process on one document.
And just on that, do you also share it externally with your clients, or is it just an internal type of roadmap?
Yeah, all of these things are external only. I'd say the only thing that becomes external is when we're doing like user research or user testing to some degree, but everything else, to my knowledge, is
internal,
internally based.
Well, let me ask you maybe a harder question. What about Jira? I mean, most product people are using Jira or some type of a similar board and backlog system. I'm using these days actually Azure DevOps, which is by Microsoft. And it's actually, I was surprised when I started using it that I didn't think it will be better than Jira. Not that it is better. I think that each one has their cons and pros, but I kind of enjoy using it.
I was surprised you're using that too. So I use Jira everywhere. So Jira is like the...
Yeah. That actually wasn't my decision as well. It was the company where I'm working. Go. Exactly.
Good example.
But I did use Jira many times before, and I even implemented it. So what do you use at Redfin for your backlog management and your work management for the team?
Yeah, so in terms of using Jira, we do use Jira. I guess the distinction in my head is that the developers use Jira more than I would say I would. Like I might file a bug, but I'm not gonna go in and like have all these boards that I'm sharing across teams and managing, whereas the developers would. So I guess in my head when I thought about product management tools that I'm using, because I touch it so little and don't really manage it the way developers manage it, I didn't include it on my list of things. Redfin definitely does use them, but I'm definitely not touching Jira boards all day, every day. And in terms of like backlog management, I would say from what I've seen, Google Suite is where that happens. Like when I think of the Jira backlog, it's bugs or feature fixes or something like that. It's not a backlog of like products.
Stories. So the stories and stuff are in the Google Suite, the stories and epics and that type of work, or are the developers developing those stories?
Yeah, I would say the developers develop the stories. It's so interesting because you're asking me these questions and I've just taken it for granted, and I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like developers are managing the stories; they're the ones with completing the Jira backlog, like all of that. And it sounds like I'm inferring from these questions that maybe at other places the PM is the one who's doing that, but yeah, I'm not the person who's making the stories, the developers are.
It's interesting if you're working, some companies work within a Scrum framework. So if you're familiar with that at all, the product owner would traditionally handle the backlog, develop stories with the team and stuff. The developers would pick those up and work on it. So it's curious how all companies kind of do it differently. So there's nothing wrong with that for sure.
Yeah, clearly they do it very differently because it kind of makes me want to do like I don't know, bring your PM to work day where we all just get to see how other people are working and get completely fascinated by how everyone has a really different process.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely is an interesting thing, because as we go in this podcast and we talk with different product managers in different companies, we do learn that almost everyone have different experiences, which is like strange and weird and inspiring all at the same time, I think. Because I always thought that not that there is one way to do things, but that there are things that are, part of what everyone is doing, but that was only based on my limited experience.
Right.
And then talking with other people and hearing how they do it in other places, it's really eye-opening. Now, you mentioned Tableau earlier a bit, and I think that this is where probably, Matt, you like that as the data guy. So you use that, I think you mentioned it is connected to your experimentation system. Is it also connected to other data sources and you're getting, different type of data views from it, so you can find out how people are using the system, etc.?
How people are using like our website, for example?
Or the application?
Few different things going on. We have applications like mobile applications as well as desktop applications. I guess desktop application just being a website in that case.
Sure.
And it varies by team. Like all the Tableau dashboards are set up by an analyst to pull from our database. Mm-hmm. So it kind of depends on what database you're pulling from, what kind of information you're going to get. Right. And I actually found it kind of convoluted. Like I said earlier, Redfin kind of spans the entire real estate industry in all directions. And that means there's just a lot of data to look at. I was very overwhelmed when I first started because I was like, I don't know what table I'm looking for. I don't know where to find this table. Yes. Now that I found this table, what do these words mean? What do these column means? What do these numbers mean in these columns? It was just a lot of dissection of information.
Yes.
And I guess I appreciate Tableau for not making me do SQL queries all the time. Yeah. But at the same time, it definitely is probably the strongest learning curve out of any of the tools that we use. But I guess that's not saying too much given the fact that we are relatively simple in our tooling, clearly.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And switching gear to another area of products that probably use a bit, but maybe it's under the same bucket of you didn't think it's part of the product manager, is design and like mock-ups, wireframes, etc.
Yeah, so for design, we currently use Figma, which I'm of the understanding that all the designers I've worked with really enjoy using.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I like Figma.
yeah, I would recommend it based off of how they enjoy working with it. I don't personally work with it. I think I like to respect
There's
the
the space.
yeah, I like to
sure.
respect designers as the designer. I don't
Yeah.
try to get hyper involved because I feel like that undermines their investment and their expertise. So
hmm
as you mentioned, I didn't consider it a product management tool because in my head it's the domain of the product designer to be responsible for our Figma files.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and that's definitely the experience that I have as well. Although I like to tinker around with almost every tool that I can put my hands on. So to me, it's all of it is in my domain. What are we talking about, right? But
the anti-minimalist.
Exactly. One of the reasons maybe I like that is because I use it as a tool for myself to learn what other tools are, what can they do, and what I can learn from them and improve my abilities to create my own products.
Right. It goes back to the topic of the this whole show, product for product. I mean, it's comparing tools and trying to see what's best, trying to pick that stuff apart.
Yeah, but it also helped us doing our job. I think, at least in my mind, it helped me do my job better, that I have different point of views about different type of products and different experiences of products. And once I have those experiences, I hope I'm a better product manager, that I can help my team come up with other ideas from other domains that they may not have thought about. That's just, my perspective about this thing. And that's why I like tinkering with different products and whatever. But yeah, on Figma, I cannot say that I'm the main user there. But I definitely, like to learn a bit of the features, and it's very feature rich and whatever. So I kind of stopped at duplicate an element and moving it around and changing it a bit, but I don't know much more than that. But I do love their collaboration options. So that's what I was always looking at, this type of products.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate your curiosity and willingness to explore. I think I find myself in rabbit holes too quickly, so I try to be really careful about protecting myself from that.
That's true too.
Yeah, like you said, you go in, you make some adjustments, but you don't get too deep down the Figma rabbit hole. I remember when I first started, I almost started watching full-blown tutorials. I was like, okay, Phyllis, you're going too far.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave this in the hands of our designers instead of trying to take over understanding all of
Definitely. Yeah, it's more about the type of designs that different products have and type of user experiences they will have and how they solve problems. And from that, if I can draw some type of conclusions or ideas towards my product and they would make sense to me, I would try to pour down those ideas. So to have a richer experience or to have different type of ideas or whatever. What about collaboration tools like Miro or whiteboards or workflows and stuff like that? Are you using any of those?
Yeah, the Google document is our collaboration.
Everything is Google document. Oh, I see. So you're sharing it in the Google document, and then you will play around with other people through the Google documents. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Do not underestimate how many comments there are in a given Google Doc at Redfin.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely Google Documents are great, much better than they used to be 10 years ago. So they improved a lot. Though still people are, including myself, tending to try other products like Miro or Mural or whatever. Again, maybe it's just our curiosity. I don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah, we use Miro where I work, and I've been working in FigJam, which is part of Figma. So we have the freedom to work in whatever tool we see best. But that's just a curiosity thing. So at the end of the day, whatever works for you and your business, going back to the minimalist approach, you don't have to do everything and use every tool. So if Google Docs is working, that's great.
Yeah, I think I find that it makes navigation easier, right? Because if you're spreading it, I'm just picturing everything you're saying, right? There's a Jira board, and now there's the Google document, and there's a Figma document, and there's the Miro collaboration tool, and there's all these other things going on.
Quickly overloaded.
Yeah, you're quickly over. One, you have to ramp up on all of these tools, and everyone else working on the project has to ramp up on all of these tools. And then any given question could be answered in any given location. And I think that also makes distribution of information kind of difficult.
Yes.
So there's definitely pros and cons to every system. And I think something I appreciate about the way that we do our work is that it still has its navigation issues. Like there's still a lot of documents to find in different places, but a lot of things will be held in the same space, and you won't take time away to try to ramp up every stakeholder on a new tool for everything that you're working on.
Yeah. Funny thing, and that's something that you said reminded me that I actually don't like Slack. I know it's hard to admit because there are so many Slack users out there that love it so much. But I feel when I use Slack exactly what you said, that it's all over the place and it's just one more tool that I don't really need. And luckily where I work right now, we're not using Slack. We're actually using Teams, which I think is a bit more condensed and not as busy as Slack.
Yeah, that's what I traditionally have used, Teams.
But Slack, for some reason, and I'm not sure what it is exactly, I think it's a bit too overwhelming and there's just too much stuff in there. But maybe that's only my personal experience.
No, I would agree. I would agree with that. I've had a similar experience with Slack.
Yeah.
I've tried to get into it and had that similar experience.
So I would guess, Phyllis, you're using Google Docs for that too, like coveted across, the organization and stuff like that, right?
We definitely use Slack as well.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say there's a distinction between the type of conversation that's going to be had on a document versus the type of conversation that's going to be had over Slack.
Sure.
For
Yeah, that's true.
example, go back to the button change example. We changed the button from blue to red, and I need to ask a developer for updates. I'm not going to go comment on the doc and tag the developer when I can just Slack and ask the same question.
Yep.
So
Right.
I think it's more about what needs to be communicated and understanding how fleeting is that information and how fast of a response do you need, and then kind of adjusting from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I kind of recalled while we were talking is something I used to say many years ago, and I still say that the tools don't make the job, is the people that make the job or the work.
Yeah.
Which basically, I used to work with people that would like, oh, I just need this tool and I just need that tool so I'll be able to do my work. But I in some cases, it was completely false statement because they just didn't know how to do the work. And even once they got the tool, they still didn't know how to do the work. So if you know how to do the work, you don't really need a lot of tools to do that.
Right. At the end of the day, it's about the collaboration with your teammates, and it's however best you can accomplish that.
Yeah, and competency of the person that is doing the work. So if you don't know how to be a product manager, then it doesn't matter how many tools you will use, you will still not know how to be a product manager.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
And product management is not a very standardized position, so using a bunch of different tools, and it kind of fits with the role too.
And also the tools are always going to keep changing.
Right.
There's going to be new ones next year and the year after and the year after. So if all you get value out of is understanding the tool, then you might get left behind at some point in the future.
Very, very true. Very true. And during this process of doing the podcast, we do learn about new tools we didn't know about before. It's quite amazing how many tools there are out there that are competing on our attention.
I'm sure there's many. It sounds like there's a lot more than I do.
And more to come, believe me.
there are. And that's what my initial conversation with Moshe about all this was like. There are just so many tools out here. What on earth are you supposed to use? That was kind of the genesis for this whole show.
Nice.
Thank you, Phyllis. I mean, this was really nice chatting about it because it gave me, at least, I'm sure also to you, Matt, a perspective about this that we don't think about it every day, especially when we're looking for all of these tools that, like we said.
Yep.
So I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking me these questions and kind of making me think differently about, I guess, how quote unquote simple our tools are. to me, it sounds like a pro, but it's definitely made me a little curious about, well, yeah, I think you've inspired a fear of missing out. Like now I'm like, well, what tools am I missing
no
out
FOMO.
to?
No.
The information that I don't have. But yeah, this has been a really insightful conversation for me as well.
I'm glad. And just last one shout out about the book you're writing.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah, tell us a bit about that before we wrapping up.
Yeah, I'm writing a book about imposter syndrome. It was originally supposed to be positioned as imposter syndrome for product managers, and then I realized that might be a little unfair because everybody is experiencing imposter syndrome. So I imagine parts of the product role lend itself to experiencing it more differently. So I just finished the first draft for that, which is super exciting because now it feels more real. But I would honestly say I saw a tweet, and I've seen this tweet a couple of times, like the best way, if you really want to learn something, write about it. And I've learned so much in the process of writing about it. And it's helped me a lot because sometimes I'll feel my imposter syndrome kicking in, and then I'll be like, no, I remember I wrote a chapter on this. And then I'll be like, yeah, I should take my own advice.
Yeah.
That's also incredibly helpful.
Definitely. That's amazing. Good luck with that. And I'm looking forward to...
I look forward to reading that one day.
Books are also part of the tools we're using to learn. So we probably will do a series one day about books for product managers. So
yeah, I got a lot of those too. So I'm happy to talk about that.
But I'm happy that you didn't do it just for product managers, Phyllis, because yes, I think everyone has that.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Excellent. So where does our listeners can find you?
So I'm certainly most active on LinkedIn, although I pop into Clubhouse and other platforms every so often. So just my first name, last name, Phyllis Njoroge on LinkedIn is the best way to find me.
Thank you so much, Phyllis, for joining the show again. Really has been a pleasure.
No, thank you. I've certainly enjoyed it, and you've given me a lot to think about.
Thank you very much.
Very cool. Well, this is Matt Moshe signing off. Thanks for listening to Product for Product. Appreciate it.